Hey everyone, Token Dave over here. Dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by. And Marvel Madness continues with a new edition of For the Defense. Here, I talk about a movie that is predominantly panned by both critics and fans and try to convince you to rewatch said movie in a different and or a more positive light. Wow, and I thought I was stretching by bringing back the ADD ADHD rant 2 weeks ago. Woo! Anyway, so with the success of Blade, X-Men, and Spider-Man, Hollywood saw that comic book-based superhero movies were turning in a profit yet again. However, after the release of Spider-Man, these types of movies, you start to see a bit of a degrade in quality, with most of these movies. And today I'm going to be talking about, the start of this decline in comic book-based superhero movies with 2003's Daredevil. So, Matt Murdock is a blind New York City defense attorney who lost his sight at a young age in a freak accident where radioactive toxic waste spilled into his eyes. And while this accident caused him to lose his sight, it also caused him to have heightened and hyper senses in hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And thus, he uses these senses to become the Max Vigilante and the Guardian of Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil. Daredevil's activities have been caught in the radar of the Kingpin, whom is a mysterious crime lord in New York City that basically very few know his real identity. And while Daredevil is a huge annoyance, he actually has more pressing issues when one of his business partners decides to back out of a deal, causing the Kingpin to hire Bullseye, an assassin, to take out both his partner and the Devil Guardian of Hell's Kitchen. Now, before I go any further, I am reviewing and talking about the theatrical cut. I did not know this until 2 months ago, but I found out from MovieWoof.com that there is actually a director's cut to this movie. And, I have not seen the director's cut, and I heard it's really good. So I really suggest that you guys go to MovieWolf.com and check them out because their reviews are awesome, and I'll put their link down below. So with that said, Daredevil was actually the perfect choice for the next movie, with the success of the other 3 superhero comic book based movies, because Daredevil is actually, a grounded superhero that has a unique sense of, superpowers. However, this movie did not go over so well despite being a box office hit. Why is that? Well, pretty much, I'll say this in a nutshell, the movie is drastically imbalanced. And, this imbalance turned a lot of people off. And there are some people that basically, actually kind of like this movie. I'm in the camp that basically, I'll say this right off the bat, I kind of do like this movie, but don't mistake about it. This is not a good movie, and I'll explain why. First, we got a good cast of, Ben Affleck, Colin Farrell, Michael Duncan Clark, and Joe Polano. Great casting choices, with the exception of Michael Duncan Clark. Michael Duncan Clark was a controversial choice at the time, and me personally, I would have rather had, Butterby, the super heavyweight boxer. I'd rather have had him as the Kingpin. But despite that, Michael Duncan Clark was awesome as the Kingpin. So you had a great cast and great performances on that end. However, despite those good performances, oh boy, you got the performances of Jennifer Gardner as Elektra and Jon Favreau as Foggy Nelson that were really bad in this. Jennifer Gardner was famous for Alias at that time, and she was a big name. So it was like, oh, a beautiful girl that does martial arts effectively. Let's make her Elektra. Ugh. And Jon Favreau, I don't know what it is. This is the start of Jon Favreau appearing in comic book-based movies and making both of their characters pretty much bumbling comic relief people. Yeah. These two acted nothing like their comic book counterparts, which I'll go more into detail with when I do an AA of this movie. But, yeah, so while you had great actors and good actors and good performances, in this movie, the two bad ones really, really are so bad, it kind of balances out those performances. I feel that the biggest problem with this movie is the editing. And it is because of the editing that, there are some things that are that don't make sense, or some things that don't flow very well. For example, one thing that doesn't flow very well is the transition scenes, because you will see wide shots of New York City landscapes, and then it's just go to a next scene and it's like, wait a minute, why are you having all these wide shots of New York City skyline, and they just come out suddenly. It's it's not an ease into it. It's just one scene, they just go to the sideline and then go to another one. It's like, whoa, slow down, and you kind of notice that they don't really show many scenes of people actually on the streets of New York, which, yeah, it kind of displays that, I really doubt that they shot the movie in New York City, despite it's supposed to be taking place in New York City. And with Jon Favreau in the movie, I kind of could see that it's probably shot in, California. Hell, the subway doesn't even look like a New York City subway. Anyway, but that's not the only editing problem. We actually have, some lines, dialogue that kind of don't make sense, and particularly when Bullseye asks for a costume and then he doesn't get one, it's like, okay, why was that in the movie? Why wasn't that cut? And speaking of which, the Kingpin, his master plan, we don't really get a sense of what was the deal between the Kingpin and his business partner, and what was Kingpin's plan? You don't really get that. It's like, okay, and basically, we got the romance between Daredevil and Elektra, which, they actually have some really, really great romantic elements here, but the performance and the way the scenes come out, you don't really develop the romance, in a organic way. And the chemistry between Ben Affleck and Jennifer Gardner, you see small potentials of it, but it's not properly developed. So it looks like a lot of things must have been cut out, And this editing really doesn't allow us to, get better development of the characters, Oh boy. So we also have the special effects. Now, this time people were really, really using CGI to a lot more so. And, this is 2003, so basically CGI does tend to age. But here's the thing, the CG in this and the special effects, they're not bad, actually. They've aged, but they haven't aged as horribly compared to a lot of other movies. And, while some of the CG is kind of off-putting, it's not overdone, and it is done effectively. And it is noticeable, but like I said, it's aged, but it's actually, not as badly aged. The CG and the special effects range from mediocre to good, which, while imbalanced, it's still decent. The action sequences are awesome in this, but the action sequences are a little too over the top. Now, you have to keep in mind that the Daredevil character and the Daredevil comics, they're pretty grounded, and some of the move sets, that they have done in this, they went overboard a little too much. And some of these fight sequences were not necessary. I'm looking at that opening fight sequence between, Matt Murdock and Elektra. That thing was totally unnecessary, And also to top it off, basically, in addition to that, we have an awesome soundtrack. We got a soundtrack of basically like The Calling, Evanescence, Fuel, Saliva, Drowning Pool, Rob Zombie, and Hoobastank all up in this. Yeah, I know it's new. It's considered new metal, and people say it's whack and it's corny. You know what? Screw it. This soundtrack was freaking awesome. And to top it off, this was like the last gasp of decent rock and new metal music and everything, before hip-hop and pop totally took over everything, So, with all of that said, and, oh, yeah, one more thing. Yeah, there are some things, you have to have some suspension of disbelief, but there are things that are just way too out there. It's like, what the hell? Like, okay, so we understand that Mac's accident heightened his senses, but did that automatically make him, like, a highly competent martial artist overnight? I mean, yeah, it made it look like this in the original comics, but when Frank Miller took over and expanded Daredevil's origins, they explained some things. This was a little too far-fetched to totally grasp, and you have Frank Miller's characters up in this movie. So, yeah, while you're supposed to have some suspension of belief, they went a little too damn far. So, what's my verdict of, 2003's Daredevil? It's alright, This is not a good movie. But it's not a bad movie. There have been way worse comic book and Marvel-based movies. And this is a guilty pleasure of mine. So, like, could I recommend anyone to go out and seek this movie out? No. Could I see why people hate this movie? Oh, yeah. But I could also see why people like this and why it's a guilty pleasure, What's your take on Daredevil? Please, drop me a comment below, give me a like, follow me on Facebook at Token Dave or on Twitter at Token Dave 80, subscribe, and ring that bell so you know when a new video loads. But until then, this has been Token Dave, the dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by, and I'll catch all of you later.